Now, in March, the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa published a set of draft rules that could lead to the halving of call termination rates over the next year. However, other players in the sector do not believe the new call termination regulations will give smaller players a leg up. Cell C CEO argues that the move will rather favour the bigger players like Vodacom and MTN. Mudiwa Gavaza, business writer for The Business Day, joins us now to speak on efforts to reduce communication costs. Mudiwa, thank you for your time and hello.
Good afternoon, Alessandro.
Let's recap again on what these call termination rates are and how they are supposed to lead to a reduction in communication costs for South Africans.
Okay, cool. So, just to use an example, let's say you're on Vodacom, I'm on Cell C, right? If I make a call to you, there's a cost associated with that, right? We think of, a per minute cost. But inside that per minute cost is a literal infrastructure cost, where if I'm making a call from Cell C onto Vodacom's network, Vodacom is charging Cell C to say, hey, you are using our infrastructure to make sure that your customer talks to our customer. So there's what's called an interconnect fee, but they have there's mobile termination rate, call termination rates. So that is what is up for discussion. So over the years, those costs have come down quite substantially. Once upon a time, it was as high as R1.30 or 34, just as a termination rate, not the full cost per minute, right? And then ICASA stepped in and it's been going down over the years. So where the likes of Cell C and Telkom are sitting is to say they want to keep what's called asymmetry happening in the market. Asymmetry is basically the notion that the smaller networks get to charge a higher rate to terminate calls on their networks than the two large networks. So what does that mean right now? Currently, to terminate a call on MTN or Vodacom's network, it's 9 cents. And then to terminate a call on Cell C and Telkom's network, you're looking at 13 cents, right? So that higher fee that the likes of Cell C and Telkom can charge, that's what they're actually fighting for, to say, we can reduce the fees, but keep the differential, right? Maybe let's take it down to a situation where it's maybe, let's say, 9 cents for the small networks and maybe 5 or 4 cents for the big networks. But let's keep the differential there just so that, the smaller networks can continue to compete.
Speaking about smaller networks, then you spoke to George Mendes, the CEO at Cell C. I want to get his perspective here. Like you're saying, the differential is important to him. But, if ICASA is going to go ahead with these regulations, that could actually put them on the back foot. Yeah, so you can look at it today and you can look at it when these rates first came in. You're looking at like 20 plus years of history here. So the argument that initially came in was that by the time that Cell C came into the market, which was in 2001, and Telkom came into the market, which was in 2010, the likes of Vodacom and MTN had built up such a large user base, right, that having pricing that is competitive as a smaller network was already a bit tough. So I'll give you this as an example. If we're going to say that there are about 110 or so million SIM cards in the market, and you have Vodacom as the biggest operator with almost 50% of the market, then chances are when a Vodacom customer calls someone, just on probability, there's a 1 in 2 chance that they're going to call someone else on the Vodacom network. Got you.
So chances are they're going to get a favorable rate because they're just calling another Vodacom customer. They aren't getting into the realm of all of this, other network fees and what, right? So your fee on they call it on-net and off-net, which is on-network and off-network. Your on-network cost is going to be much cheaper, right? Because you're just calling someone else who's there. So Vodacom to Vodacom, we're living our best lives, right? So as a Vodacom customer, 1 in 2. If you're a Cell C, right, and you're commanding, let's call it 10 to 15% of the market based on current numbers, think of now what the probabilities are looking like,
That should
right?
be a Cell C to Cell C call.
Yes. The chances that it's going to be a Cell C to Cell C call are 1 in 10.
Oh, man.
Right.
Okay.
So those favorable rates are only available 1 in 10, 1 out of 10 times on a probability basis, right? So that's the differential that the likes of Georgia are talking about, to say, guys, when it comes to these revenues, when it comes to competition, it's very hard for us to what you call this, to compete. So let's keep you know, those higher rates so that we can continue to make you know, our calls. Despite contrary belief around WhatsApp calls and FaceTime and what, yes, voice calls, normal calls, they're declining, but they are still a huge piece of the business in the industry.
With that said, Mudiwa, then, you know, ICASA's role here and its mandate, I think, really matters. Because, of course, decreasing communication costs is a very important part of democracy in South Africa, even of, like, you know, development, small businesses and the likes, really being able to be profitable. With that said, how much of the competition aspect falls within their mandate here, that they would be able to ensure that they keep the playing field as level as possible by virtue of having this differential? Also keen to know if you know what the bigger guys like MTN and Vodacom might think of it all.
Okay, so there's a couple of ways that we can slice this.
Okay.
But in essence, ICASA is of the view that they have what they call a glide path, which is basically milestones at which rates have been coming down. As I said, some of these termination rates used to be above 1 rand. Now we're in a realm where we're talking 9 cents, 13 cents. Once upon a time, I think it was a difference of the big networks were at 20 cents and the smaller networks were at 44 cents. So things have been going down. This has been a process that's been more than a decade in the making, and they've been putting, you know, all of these milestones in place. Where it ends up is that a year from now, because right now, according to the current path, you have the 9 and you have the 13. These two are meant to come down and be the same amount in July next year at 4 cents. So is that, so in essence, you would have leveled the playing field. But the smaller networks are saying, actually, you are just creating an efficiency for MTN and Vodacom, and expectedly MTN and Vodacom have welcomed you know, this leveling, you know, because as far as they're concerned, okay, cool, this is great. But the smaller networks are like, no.
Well, I think we'll have a lot more of this, especially as we see some results and the likes coming out, and we can engage these companies a little bit more. Mudiwa, a pleasure. Thank you so much. That was Business Day's business writer, Mudiwa Gavaza.